Good afternoon, happy weekend, hope you've had a good week. Here I am again, the muscular socialist, Sean Eugene Boy. Following on from last week's video where I was talking about, the reason why I do these videos, the code for yourself and the code for society. I think this week I'm going to talk about something that came up. I was before Christmas, I was chatting to a guy. He's a lot older than me. That's possible, but no, this guy's like, back in the day, proper boomer, you know what I mean? And we were talking about how hard it would be, how hard it is today to get on. And I was specifically talking about the under 30s, who I have an enormous amount of sympathy for. So this guy, who is very much a self-made man, very working class, he was sort of, he came down to London, in the 60s, and he met his missus and they worked really hard, and they didn't go on holidays and, did all this shit. And then they bought themselves a house, and then I think they went into business or stuff, but they did really well. They were very, very working class. I mean, like proper fucking, no messing about. And he was sort of making this point that maybe the under 30s are moaning a little bit too much, and maybe, they've been cosseted a little bit, which I do, there is this kind of an argument for that a little bit, a whole generation who really didn't hear the no a lot. There is an argument to say that that the parents of Gen X, my mob, maybe we were just a little bit too reticent to lay the law down a little bit, which is what you kind of, I think, with children up to about the age of 8, and then there is an argument to say that that discipline has a place. It's tough to see where that line lies, but at the moment we do have a generation of kids who are coming out and they're kind of used to getting their own way. Well, so this is the argument the guy was using, and I was kind of agreeing with some parts of it. And then he was sort of saying, well, and then today they just keep on seeing a wall, and then they just sit down with their arms crossed, going, well, I can't get around it. So I was sort of saying to him, well, actually, hold it. So we started to discuss the whole situation, and then he kind of lost his temper a bit with me, which was quite funny. And so I got down to brass tacks with him, and I said to him, okay, well, how much would a guy, anyone earn today, under age of 30? And you just say, well, let's say £30,000 a year. So what are you going to do with that? I was saying to him, especially with your rent, and if your rent's £1,000 a week, £1,000 a month, that's 12 grand gone straight away. And then there's your travel, which could be £50 a week. So that's that's a couple of grand, isn't it? 2.5 grand or whatever it is. That leaves you with 60. And then you've got to live, and then you've got to pay your council tax, and you've got to pay your electricity, and you're fucking, let's say you're 24, 25, and you want to fucking go out, do you know what I mean? And he was like saying, oh no, you've got to save, and you've got to do that. And then we got down to, well, what would you do with this money? Usually back in the day, you saved to buy a house. Well, if the average price of a house in England is something in the region of 250 to 300,000, in London, the average price is 720,000. So usually you'd have to be earning 1/5, so that's like fucking crazy, man. That's £150,000 a year or something, So how can you, on £30,000, even get into the ballpark of buying a house or buying a flat or buying any property? So this guy was going, he was racking his brains, because he's absolutely convinced that, Generation Z and, the Zoomers and stuff are, they're shiftless little bollockses, and they don't want to do any work, and that's they'd rather spend money on, fucking coffee or, some other crap that they see on TikTok. And I was saying, well, I think you're being super harsh, because at the end of the day, you could be doing 3 fucking jobs, not going out at all, saving every penny that you make, living on pot noodle, and you'd still be absolutely broke. You'd still get nowhere. You wouldn't be able to buy a fucking Portaloo in London, And they said, well, then you move out. Well, I said, that's brilliant, isn't it? But suppose your work's in London, I suppose, so, okay, it used to be you come to London to make some money. Now we've got to piss off to Margate or go off to Redcar or something, you know what I mean? But as and so all of these arguments were kind of falling flat on his face, because he's a bit of a, he's a bit Tory, this guy. and really believes that Thatcher did the right thing, and you had to control the unions, and you had to impose neoliberal economics on everything. And I really like the guy. I mean, we get on great, and I really like bouncing ideas off him, which I think is a real problem about today, where people are absolutely terrified of meeting somebody with a different viewpoint. Me personally, I come from that generation that loves it. I mean, how do you test your ideas unless you argue with people who disagree with you? This is the reason why I have no problem endorsing someone like Douglas Murray, who probably, by his own admission, would be probably from the right side of the argument, but he's a fantastic writer. He's really clear in how he explains his ideas, and arguing with him, you'd only improve your own ideology, your own belief system, wouldn't you? And this guy has got a really beautiful brain as well. So it was great bouncing off him with this. But even he came to right at the end, and he stopped losing his temper, and he kind of conceded defeat and said, "No, you're probably right." He said, "You're probably right. It would be impossible today." So that's where we are at the moment. He's in a place with the under 30s are now. When you've been given that. And someone who's a real sort of, pro-market person like my mate, who says, well, I suppose you're fucked. Then, we've got to find new answers, because you can't have a whole generation completely without hope about whatever they want to do. Do you know what I mean? I mean, this is the reason, and I think it is bad as well, because you're just going to have 45-year-old adolescents. I mean, people have to get married, people have to go through the life process, And this is funny enough where the Tories are screwed anyway, because the thing is that more people, stay single, the more they're going to be voting for Labour, And the society at the moment is just rewarding the people who've got the money, So if you ever talk, I was listening to a podcast, and this person was talking about buying a house. He's bought a house and he's 31, 32. But it was just obvious he came from a very middle class background. It was obvious it was the bank of mum and dad's, and I do not blame him. A lovely guy, I don't, you don't want to sort of go over the top about the class fucking element about it. But the thing about it is we're going back to the Victorian times, where only people who inherit money or come from money can thrive. This is great expectations. Do you know what I mean? 80% are like Pip, waiting around for meet some bloke in the fucking marshes who will, be their sponsor, from Australia or something. It's crazy business. And actually in the Victorian times, the thing was that if you inherited the money, you could bank on the fact, let's suppose you're 20, your old man's got to pop it, because no one lived past 60. So you got the money, didn't you? Where now we're not even playing that part of the bargain. The Gen Xers and the Boomers. We're fucking living till we're 90. So the poor. So even if you are waiting for money, I reckon there's going to be a load of murders. Do you know that? I think Gen Z are going to start knocking off their parents, because they think, well, I can't fucking wait around for this prick to die. Do you know what I mean? If you're a Boomer or a Gen Xer, because I'm a Gen Xer, give them the money, mate. Because I don't let them make any meals for you. Shall I just make it? Don't worry, Dad. I'll just make you a drink? It's all right, son. I'm good. I saw a video about this. Maybe because this is going to have to be part of the solution. But for the vast majority, they don't have this situation, do they? They don't come from money. Daddy hasn't done brilliantly. We're talking about a lot of people whose parents are on the breadline. They might have a house, then again they may not. And then saying what's going to happen with these guys? And people want to do their own thing. The thing about human beings is the two things I've kind of learned is they like things to be fair, and they like to do things for themselves. And at the moment, people are totally handicapped. You've got nurses going to food banks, whatever the fuck that Tory wank is going on about. If you're on 23 grand a year, 24 grand a year, you're trying to make ends meet, you're going to end up potless. Especially if you live in some parts of London, you might have to go to a food bank. That is a reality. I used to work in one, and towards the end of it, when I was doing some work there, you did see most of the people were working. Do you know what I mean? And it's a horror show. It would never have happened in my day. In my day. So the thing is that this is something that that really does dwell on me a lot. I do think about this situation a lot, because young people have to have this space. It's very claustrophobic at the moment if you're young. There's no space to walk into. Everybody's onto everything because of this bastard internet. Do you know what I mean? So it's tough to make a buck. So those are my thoughts about the under 30s, and the solutions, of course, are unions, left economics, building more houses, nationalising services. Getting the basics. We own them. And that's something that I'm going to discuss next time, because the next video I'm going to talk about is the 70s, a much maligned period of time, which was incredibly racist, incredibly sexist, incredibly homophobic. I lived through it. From that point of view, not on. But from another point of view, the wealth equality, the wealth inequality was was much, much smaller than it was now, and working people were confident. They were quite cocky about their lives. You could see this reflected in the art as well. All the great actors, all the great singers, all the great bands from that time. Everything from fashion to art. It was a brilliant time, an amazing time to be a working class person. As I said before, a working class white person. But if we could get that spirit of the 70s back, but make it absolutely, totally diverse, totally open, so everybody could benefit it. Everyone in the 80% could get that confidence back, because that's what we need more than anything else. Is we need the 80% to have the confidence and not think that that they're at the mercy of very rich people. Because at the moment you've got people going, either cheering for Elon Musk or cheering for Bezos, who owns the Washington Post. It's like, my millionaire is better than your millionaire. I mean, this is the corporate dream, isn't it? Where you've got these proles who don't have any power at all, and they just position themselves behind the most powerful people. And that's a load of bollocks, that is. I'm going to say that again. That's a load of bollocks, that is. So anyway, all right, and so anyway, I hope you're well. I hope you're thriving. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye.